Hello there, and welcome back to another week of Circling Seattle Sports. This is for September 21st through the 27th. A pretty big week, just considering all things. The Mariners being in the second to last week of their season, the Seahawks going into week three after a crucial loss, a storm going into the playoffs here, and the Sounders continuing throughout their regular season, especially considering what also happened on the 26th with having 7 different Seattle sports teams play. That's a big Sunday. Big Seattle Sports Sunday. It was a big deal. Seattle did win 4 games compared to their 3 losses that they had in the day. That's fine. But regardless, we do have a slate of different sports teams to go through here, as per usual. So we're going to start with our Seattle Seahawks here. Um, they last played against the Minnesota Vikings in week 3 on the road. They suffered a difficult and frustrating loss this game, 17-30. Overall, just it's a frustrating loss, one that shouldn't have happened, really. And I'll get into that in a little bit here, but I do want to, of course, as I usually do, go into stat leaders here. Um, so for passing, obviously Russell Wilson completed 23 of 32 passes for 298 yards and a touchdown. On the ground, Chris Carson, the usual suspect, 12 carries, 80 yards, and 1 TD. Chris had a nice game, had a 30-yard touchdown early, but outside of that, still hasn't been able to top 100 yards this year. Receiving wise, DK Metcalf had his best game of the year, 6 receptions, 170 yards, and 1 touchdown. He had the game's first touchdown, and that would be his only one of the contest. In tackles, it wasn't Bobby Wagner this week. Strong safety Jamal Adams led in tackles with 22 total tackles, 10 solo, and 1 tackle for loss. And in the turnover department, there were no turnovers forced. So um, overall, some decent performances, but when you look at how this game went and, what things were what we're going to remember from this game, it's frustrating. The team couldn't close the door. The team had an early lead. They jumped out to a couple touchdown lead, and then by halftime they were losing. So the offense, was off to a hot start once again, similar to their game against Tennessee last week. And again, the team couldn't close the door. Hot start fizzled out. This is the team's first loss to the Vikings in 12 years. That's a big deal. 12 years, the Vikings, we've seen this team several times throughout the past few years. Usually it's on prime time and here in Seattle. First time losing to an opponent in 12 years. That's a little frustrating, I would say. And the Seahawks were 34-9 following a loss since 2012, since Russell Wilson joined the team. So now they move to 34-10 following a loss. So kind of it's time, I would think, to sort of sit down and look in the mirror if you're this team and figure things out, because obviously it's week 3 and I preach patience, especially considering that now the NFL is in a 17-game season. But with the way that this division is right now, with the 49ers being 2-1, the Rams and Cardinals going 3-0 at the current time, and both of those teams look to continue their hot streaks with hot offenses and the Rams' good defenses, it's very crucial that this Seattle team looks at itself, holds itself accountable, and gets better going forward, because it's not going to be any easier down the stretch here. And I'll get to who they're playing next week, but after next week, you're playing the Rams, the Steelers, and the Saints. None of those games are going to be easy. The coaching staff needs to better prepare the defense and the offense. What I mean by that is the offense, again, similar to last week, failed to really put the icing on the cake, failed to give this team insurance points. Even in week 1, there could have been more insurance points scored. Missed opportunities. You want to keep the foot on the gas pedal. And then defensively, the team really hasn't forced that many turnovers. Need to get off the field. If you continue to put the defense out there, they're going to get tired. That's kind of common logic. As well as both cornerbacks, DJ Reed and Trey Flowers, in their post-game press conferences, mentioned that they felt that the Vikings, for lack of better words, schemed their behind. So basically, the Vikings coaching staff got their team ready to come out there and win that ball game. Seahawks coaching staff, again, is left looking at themselves wondering, how did we let this game slip away? It comes down to, your offense not being able to continue to put points on the board, continue to hold the ball and keep the defense off the field. as well as not being able to force turnovers and really just put teams away. I mean, the Vikings, similar to the Titans, have good weapons on offense. Kirk Cousins, I'll give him slack here and there. Uh, he had a good game. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen out wide. Those are two good receivers. Justin Jefferson torched the Seahawks. Dalvin Cook, their number one running back, who was a guy who was in the running for the rushing title last year, didn't even play this game. So, I mean, if you take that, you put a guy who is a consistent 1,000-yard rusher, and you put him back into the lineup, this game is probably uglier than it is. And you look back to the Titans, Derrick Henry, arguably, I would say, the best running back in the league right now. He had an incredible game, a monster game, on 35 carries. And then wide receivers, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. You have to be able to put up points and contest with these guys, and especially in the division that you're in, playing the Rams with Stafford, Deshaun Jackson, Cooper Kupp, the Cardinals with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore is a rookie. And the 49ers, with their weapons on offense and Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, you're going to have to be able to put up points and can, maintain a lead when you get it, because the offenses in this division are going to be able to put up points on you. So as I mentioned, the team really needs to sit down, figure some things out, look itself in the mirror and say, hey, we got to get things going. We got to get the ball rolling, because if we continue this style of play and we continue this level of play into this next stretch of the next few games, it's not going to be, you're going to more than likely look like you're going to end up last in the division. So player of the game, at least for me, I'm just going to give it to DK. DK had his best game of the year with 6 receptions, 107 yards, and a touchdown. Good to get him involved, especially since Tyler Lockett had to deal with an injury later in this game. Defensively, I'll give it to Jamal Adams. Leading the team in tackles is good. Getting a tackle for loss is good. And that goes back to speak on Jamal Adams, it goes back to the coaching staff speaking about scheme. In the post-game press conference after the Titans game, Pete Carroll said that the team is still figuring out ways to get Jamal Adams integrated differently. You've had him for about a couple of years now. You'd figure that you'd kind of know how you want to use this guy. You want to use his Swiss Army knife of a defensive player. I'd hope you know what you're doing with him. You get this nice Ferrari. I hope you know how to drive the thing. You know what I mean? So it comes out to the coaching staff as well. Obviously, the players are on the field, and they're the ones who are tasked to make the plays, but the coaching staff has a lot of influence on putting these guys in the right position, the right places to succeed. My least favorite part of the show, injury news. Game day inactives against the Vikings. Wide receiver D. Eskridge is still dealing with a concussion. He did not play in this game. Quarterback Jake Luton, linebacker Benson Mayowa, running back Rashad Penny, safety Marquise Blair. Blair was hurt in pregame warmups. General manager John Schneider said that it does not appear to be anything extremely serious for Blair, so hopefully that's not something that we see Blair get sidelined for, as last year tore his ACL and wasn't able to see the field after the second week. Tackle Brandon Shell and defensive end LJ Collier rounded out the game day inactives against Minnesota. And then for injuries sustained against the Vikings, defensive end Kerry Hyder Jr. sustained a concussion. Linebacker Jordan Brooks briefly dealt with really bad cramps, but did return to the game later on. And wide receiver Tyler Lockett sustained a twisted knee, but escaped the game without suffering serious injury. And tackle Jamarco Jones, starting in place of Brandon Shell, who was a game day inactive, left this game due to an upset stomach. So overall, this game was, for lack of a better word, it was a mess. Giving up a lead, not being able to put points on the board after the first half, essentially, and then dealing with some injuries. Injuries are part of every season, but to have it all, turn into this perfect storm of sorts, it's not an ideal thing. In team-related notes, the team was looking into bringing back wide receiver Josh Gordon for a third stint with the team. The news came out on the 24th that the NFL is expected to make Gordon eligible to play as early as week 4. Following his 6th drug suspension, General Manager John Schneider said that when things are taken care of officially, we'd like to get the ball rolling with him, indicating obviously that they'd like to bring him back, get him involved with the team again. The organization reportedly has always had a great relationship with Josh and has been rooting for him big time. But to end that sort of story, Today on the 27th, it was announced that Gordon was signing with the Kansas City Chiefs and will join them. So Patty Mahomes and KC get another offensive weapon. Meanwhile, the Seahawks lose out on a guy that, was a fan favorite of sorts here, lives in the area. So best of luck to Josh there in his time with KC. In league-related news, the NFL is adding a Monday Night Football game to its playoff card. On Super Wildcard weekend this year, there will be 2 Saturday games, 3 Sunday games as per usual, and a Monday night game to expand due to the expanded playoffs. So that's something interesting. Monday Night Football for the playoffs. It's an interesting dynamic. We'll have to see how that plays out. Obviously, that's later down the line, but I'm interested to see how the players feel about that. And then speaking about players, the league handed out $95,000 in fines for week 2. The league fined a total of 9 players more than $94,000 for both unsportsmanlike conduct and taunting fouls in week 2. If you've been following the NFL at all, or even the Seahawks, you know a little bit about these taunting fouls and how essentially players are getting flagged and fined now for expressing emotion, and it's concerning. So I'm hoping that there is some sort of turnaround. I know a headline came out from the NFL that they thought things were going well with the taunting fouls. So we'll have to see how that goes throughout the season. We're only in week 4 now, so that is something to keep an eye on. The team is sitting at a 1-2 record. They are 4th in the NFC West behind the Rams and the Cardinals at the top of the division, going undefeated with 3-0, and then the 49ers are 2-1. Speaking of the 49ers, in week 4 here, the Seahawks take on the San Francisco 49ers at 1:05 Pacific time. That game is down in Santa Clara in Levi Stadium. So October 3rd, big division matchup. It's always important when you play the 49ers at all, let alone, with the way that this division is shaken out early on. So that will be a big deal. And like I said earlier, hoping that the Seahawks are able to look themselves in the mirror and really take care of business after a disappointing last game against Minnesota and disappointing past 2 weeks. So as we head into our Seattle Mariners baseball club here, the Mariners played the Oakland Athletics from the 20th through the 23rd down in Oakland in the Coliseum. And then they traveled over to Anaheim to play the Angels from the 24th through the 26th. On the 20th, at the Athletics, they would win that game 4-2, thanks to play of the game third baseman Kyle Seager with 3 hits and 3 RBIs. On the 21st, they would win that game 5-2. Play of the game for that game would be shortstop J.P. Crawford with 3 hits, 1 run, and 2 RBIs. On the 22nd, they would win that game and win the series 4-1. Player of the game would be first baseman Ty France with 2 hits, 2 runs, and an RBI. On the 23rd, at the Athletics, they would win that game 6-5 and sweep the Athletics down in Oakland. Player of the game would be pinch hitter Luis Torrens coming in and hitting a 2-run homer. On the 24th, in that first game against the Angels, they would win 6-5. Player of the game would be first baseman Ty France with 2 hits, 1 run, and 3 RBIs. On the 25th, they would lose that game in brutal fashion, 14-1. Player of the game would be shortstop J.P. Crawford with 1 hit and 1 RBI. And then on the 26th, they would win 5-1, winning that series and leaving them on that road trip, only losing 1 game. Out of those 7. Player of the game would be left fielder Jake Fraley coming in and hitting a 3-run double in the top of the 8th. So Fraley coming in, the game was tied at 1 on the top of the 8th, and then Fraley came and added some insurance runs. So big series against Oakland to go and sweep Oakland and essentially bury their playoff hopes, as well as against the Angels. This is a team that is not fighting for the playoffs. They don't have anything to fight for at the moment, essentially just to play spoiler. They still have Shohei Ohtani. They still have Jared Walsh and David Fletcher. So this is a team that still is going to, play their games. I mean, there's still money to be made, but they're not fighting for anything. And to an extent, that means they're dangerous. But anyway, big 2, go on the road, play those 7 games and win 6 of them, which, in this wild card race, you're going to have to do. You're going to essentially have to win out. More than likely be fine to win. I mean, lose like 2 games, but from here on out, it's going to be thin ice. So play of the week for the past week would be shortstop John Paul Crawford in 7 games and 33 at-bats over the past week. He had 10 hits, 4 runs, 3 doubles, a homer, 3 RBIs, 16 total bases, a 303 batting average, a 303 on base percentage, a 485 slugging percentage, and those two combined would equal to a 788 on base plus slugging percentage. Uh, JP had a great June back earlier in the season. Has really had a great career year. He's hit his most home runs this year. Um, has really been a fan favorite. Has really lit it up. Has continued to be a Gold Glove shortstop. I almost said short baseman. I apologize. Gold Glove shortstop, should win the award again this year. Um, and he said after the game on Sunday, on the 26th, he said, Seattle, I hope you're rocking with us because this is going to be important last homestand of the year. This last week of the season, JP showed out in that last week, and he's hoping that fans will come and show out, for the Mariners here. So looking into the current record and standings, they are sitting at an 86-70 record. Again, if you sat here and you told me that the Mariners would win 86 games this year, I would kind of look at you funny. 80 games, maybe, but 86 and climbing, that's impressive, and I'm proud of this team. They sit at second in the AL West. They have jumped over Oakland again since we last spoke. And in the wild card, they are 2 games back of the Boston Red Sox for the second wild card spot. And they are behind currently the Blue Jays for that second spot, who are only 1 game back. So when I say that you essentially need to win out, I'm not kidding, because Toronto's been hot. The Yankees are hot now. The Yankees just swept Boston in one of the biggest rivalries in the MLB. So it's very crucial that you win out here, because the AL East is not going to just lay down and let you take that second playoff spot. No injury news, no roster-related moves this past week, which is sort of interesting, but considering that we just went through the second to last week of the year, kind of makes sense. But the only thing I have before looking ahead in MLB and league-related news, Tampa Bay Rays president said that the team will add an outfield sign at Tropicana Field with a very simple Tampa Bay Montreal graphic. So if you don't know, the Tampa Bay Rays that play in Tropicana, they don't technically play in Tampa Bay itself. They're playing a little bit out. It's like if the Mariners played in Tacoma. The Rays have bad attendance at Tropicana Field, and due to this, they are looking into splitting their season between playing home games in Montreal and Tampa Bay. I don't know about you, but that's a little unprecedented to have any sort of sports team play home games in 2 different locations consistently throughout the year. It'd be one thing if a stadium is being rebuilt or, there were unforeseen circumstances, but to do it consciously and consistently is something that I've never seen, and I'm opposed to it because I think that's a little bit ridiculous. It would make a lot more sense if the Rays were just able to play in Tampa Bay instead of playing a little bit further out, further down the line in Florida. So regardless, getting back to our Mariners, the upcoming schedule, last homestand of the year, they're playing the A's and the Angels again, similar to last week. It's just they're doing this at home this time. The 27th, 28th, and 29th are all against the Athletics, who are essentially eliminated from the playoffs. But still, that's a team that's dangerous. They will, be competitive, and they will try to beat you. That is the first series this upcoming week, and then October 1st through 3rd, the last series at home of the season, unless this team makes it into the playoffs and is able to get a series, is against the Angels. Those are both big, and I do want to implore you, if you have the time, if you have the means, please come out and support these guys in this last week of the season, this last homestand. They have overperformed. They have exceeded expectations this year, and they've been a lot of fun to be at. It's incredible to see what they've done and what they're building here. Because again, I haven't really talked about it much on this show, but this is sort of the turning point here in the rebuild, where you're seeing these younger guys. Jared Kelenic had a great September. He struggled a little bit early on, but he's had a great September. J.P. Crawford's been a guy that you acquired from the Phillies, who's been now should be a 2-time Gold Glover. We'll see after the year. Ty France acquired in that Padres trade has made a big difference for this team. I think he leads the team in batting average and WAR, wins above replacement. Logan Gilbert's been a bright spot as a rookie pitcher. Marco Gonzalez has gone undefeated and is a 1.93 average, 1.93 earned run average since the All-Star break. A lot of these guys are overperforming and have had great stories this year. So if you can make it out for at least one of the games this upcoming homestand, I implore you to do so, and I hope to see you out there. I'll be there all week. So heading now into our Seattle Sounders. Sounders, who are still in the regular season. They on September 22nd at Lyon in the Leagues Cup final. They will lose that game 3-2. Sadly, not take home any hardware. Player of the game would be Christian Roldan. He scored 1 goal on 1 shot with 1 shot on target. The Sounders lose in the Leagues Cup final after scoring the first goal in the 48th minute. Roldan and Beneze scored, but Leon would score twice in 4 minutes in the 81st and 85th minute to win the hardware and to continue their run of dominance in the Leagues Cup. And then continuing with MLS play on the 26th, the team would travel to Kansas City and win that game 2-1. Player of the game, who else but again Christian Roldan, 1 goal scored on 1 shot, 1 on target with a 55.6% pass percentage. It was the first time the team has won in Kansas City since 2013. That's a big deal. It's a little bit funny to me that the last time, the last 2 games that the Sounders have played, in MLS competition in Colorado and Kansas City. Colorado, they haven't won over there. No, Real Salt Lake, I apologize. They haven't won in Real Salt Lake since 2011. And then come into this game against Kansas City, they hadn't won in KC since 2013. So good that you broke one streak, against KC. Obviously would have liked to break that streak against Real Salt Lake, but it's a long season. Can't sit here and pout about the past. In injury-related news, Captain Nico Lodeiro had successful knee surgery. He had right knee arthroscopy that took place after Lodeiro re-aggravated an injury that he suffered in training this past week. Head coach Brian Schmetzer said that he will return again this season, but he is not exactly sure when that may be. So that is a blow. Losing the captain is a difficult thing. He's a guy that has such importance to this team, and hasn't really been able to just integrate himself into the club due to injury and starting off the season injured. So best of recovery to Nico. Hope that all goes good. It sounded like this surgery was just to clean up some things in that knee and sort of really get it settled for just long term, so he doesn't have to deal with recurring things. So, hoping that Nico's able to get some rest and then come back, ideally just come back for playoffs, get ready, and, be a spark plug once we hit MLS playoffs. And then speaking of Nico Beneze missed the Kansas City match with a hip flexor strain, so that's why he was out. He should be good to go for the next match. In terms of team-related news, the MLS and Liga MX plan a World Cup-style tournament. So they're essentially taking the Leagues Cup and building on it, improving on it. The tournament will begin in 2023. 47 clubs will compete. That's 29 from the MLS and the others being from Liga MX. Both leagues will pause their seasons for this tournament. The tournament winner gets automatic passage to the CONCACAF Champions League round of 16. So if you win that tournament, you get, essentially a bye to the round of 16 for the CCL. And the second and third place winners get bids into the CCL. So if you win first place, round of 16 bye. Second and third place, you get into the CCL automatically. So that'll be good to see. It'll be interesting to see just because, it was really exciting to see the Sounders go far in this, go to the final. Ideally would like to take home the hardware, but another opportunity to get better and see our guys perform and, put their flag down on a bigger showcase around the world. Their team record sits at 14 wins, 6 draws, and 5 losses. They are now, again, at the top of the Western Conference, thanks to this win over KC with 48 points. They're second in the MLS in points with 48. New England has 63. So it'd be kind of a tall task to overtake New England in the Revolution there. Looking ahead for the Sounders, on the 29th, on Wednesday, they play the San Jose Earthquakes down in San Jose, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. And then October 3rd versus the Rapids, they will go to Colorado and I apologize. That is a home game. They will play the Colorado Rapids here at home at Lumen Field at 7 p.m. Pacific time. That is the first time that they will play at home since the Portland loss on the 29th. So big deal for the Sounders to get back at home, get back to winning at home. As Stephen Fry said in the last game, you want to make that place a fortress come playoffs. This team normally doesn't get the 1 seed regardless. Through their history, they've been a team that has found other ways to make the playoffs and different and lower seeds. But best case scenario, you want to win your games at home. You want to take care of business and not have to worry about going on the road and different roads that aren't always as easy as it could have been if you took care of business. So going away from the Sounders into our Seattle Storm, our first team in the playoffs here. The Storm on the 26th played in a winner-go-home game against the Phoenix Mercury. They would lose that game 85-80, ending their season in the second round of the playoffs. Player of the game would be center Mercedes Russell with 10 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 blocks. Their season ends in the second round of the playoffs. The defending champs are not able to defend their title, losing to the Mercury at home. Difficult loss to see. Phoenix came out. They've been a tough team all year. Brittany Griner's been great for them. Diana Taurasi was able to play this game. Arguably, at least for me, Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi are, arguably up there at the top of the greatest of all time for the WNBA. Seattle was really kind of struggling from the three-point line, not able to get things going from there. Early pre-Olympic break, this team was the best three-point shooting team in the league, hands down, far and away. Stats proved that. And then we go into the Olympic break, and things get a little different. People deal with some injuries. We get out of a groove. You lose 5 of 6 after the All-Star break, and you go from the 1 seed all the way down to the 4 seed. And you have to play in a single elimination game against Phoenix. I will speak on single elimination here in a little bit, but disappointing loss, I would say. Not having Stewie also didn't help. So just jumping into a segue for injury news, Breanna Stewart was not able to be medically cleared for this past game. She spoke on it in her season-ending interview today, actually, and said that there was a small chance that she could play in this game, but if she did, she had a high chance of re-injuring that foot and making things worse for her for a long time. So when you look at arguably somebody who could, down the line at the end of her career when she hangs up the sneakers, could be the best player of all time, just considering her trophy case right now and where it could be later, you don't want to mess with Stewie's future. I know that Stewie is an unrestricted free agent this year, as well as Sue Bird. But in her press conference today, she said that there's, unless something happens, unless something unforeseen happens, Stewie's going to stay in Seattle. She's got unfinished business to take care of. So that's good. That's something good to take from this. But always proud of our Storm. Playing up in Everett again. They will be back here in Seattle. They will be in Climate Pledge Arena this upcoming season. So that's good to see. Good to have the Seattle Storm back in Seattle. Appreciative of Everett and the Silver Tips and Angel of the Winds Arena for holding our world champs. But it'll be good to get back the Storm back here in Seattle and get them in that new sweet arena. But yes, disappointing loss. Phoenix is a good team, and it'll be exciting to watch the playoffs, even after the Storm are knocked out. In team-related notes, speaking of Sue Bird will weigh her options following the playoff loss to Phoenix. Bird is unsure if she will retire or not, and she has to weigh things and think about that as she heads into the offseason here. So you're looking at the best player in Storm history and one of the best of all time in the league. Not sure if she just played her last game or not. So that's important to consider and think about the impact that Sue Bird has had. Sue Bird's got 4 championship rings, has brought 4 titles to the city. There's nobody else that you can look at in Seattle professional sports that has done that. No Mariner that's done that, obviously. No Seahawk, no Sounder, no Rain player. Obviously, no Kraken player. Duh. But, yeah, Sue Bird's meant a lot to this city, and, that's for another time to speak of. But hopefully that we won't have to have a retirement segment for Sue Bird, and hopefully we'll get news here in due time that she will be coming back next season. League-related notes, both players and coaches have expressed their dismay with the WNBA's single elimination playoff format. I don't just bring this up because I'm upset that the Storm lost. It's in the first round of the playoffs when the Mercury played the New York Liberty and the Chicago Sky played Ooh, who did they play? They played their game. The first two rounds of the WNBA playoffs are single elimination games. That's a little funny. I think that's something that, if you look at the Mercury and the Liberty game, that game went into overtime. That game could have easily been a great 3-game series. Just make it a 3-game series. Doesn't need to be longer, 5, 7 games. Just make it a 3-game series. But one game, it's I feel is a little bit extreme, and it's something that hopefully changes with this league. Um, but overall, this league normally listens to its players and its coaches and does better. So I wouldn't doubt that that's in the cards eventually. So the Storm finish out with a 21-12 record on the season, third in the West, fourth in the league. They're not able to defend their title, but a good season still, regardless, considering the injuries and going through still a pandemic year. But difficult to end the season there. So overall, blessed to really have both the Seahawks, have all of our playoff teams here, all of our professional sports teams. But to go over everything that we spoke of for September 21st through September 27th this past week here, the Seahawks drop a game to the Vikings, go 1-2, go to fourth in the division, face an important game against the 49ers here this upcoming week in Santa Clara. The Mariners go 6-1 on their 7-game road trip and play an important 6-game homestand against the A's and the Angels in what potentially could be their playoff push and could elevate them into a wild card spot. The Sounders lose the League's Cup final, take an important game against Kansas City in KC to jolt them back up to number 1 in the Western Conference, and they will play some important games at San Jose and Colorado, coming back home on Colorado in October 23rd against Colorado. And the Storm play a tough game and lose to the Phoenix Mercury in the second round of the playoffs. So overall, always good to see our teams get to the playoffs, but just happy to have our team, some incredible people on these teams, and they make a great impression on us here in the Seattle area. So with that all being said, I will see you back next week for the next week of Seattle Sports News. I could add some things here, but that's to see next week. I will be back with you next week to look at everything Seattle sports. I want to thank you for tuning in to Circling Seattle Sports, and I'll see you later. You can take care.